Hello everyone, welcome to a very special initiative from AptiPlus Academy for Civil Services. So in this initiative, we are going to look at the important locations not only in India but also across the world which are important to tackle the map-based questions which are asked in UPSC prelims. So over here we will be discussing those important locations which have been in the news in the previous 1 year, and we will be looking at all those locations from every angle. So be it from the angle of international relations or from the angle of geography, environment, culture, etc. So usually we will get to see that UPSC will every year they will ask a number of map based questions comprising of at least 10 to 12 marks. So you will find that most of these questions are usually of two types. Either they are based on the India map or they are based on the world map. Most of the questions which come in case of world map based locations, they are those questions or they are those locations which have been in the news, which have been a part of the current affairs of the previous 1 year. In case of questions which are usually asked from India map, they will test the knowledge of the candidate regarding the map of India, that is both physical as well as political map of India, and along with that also current affairs will again play a major role even in case of the questions which are asked from India map as well. So over here in this particular initiative we will be covering each of the continents one by one with special focus on India at the end as well. So today we are going to start with the first continent for today. My name is Shayak Datta. I am the faculty for Geography and Environment at AptiPlus Academy for Civil Services. So the first continent that we will start with is South America. And along with South America, we will also discuss a bit regarding Central America as well. Again, just to clarify that we will be discussing the places which have been in the news, but apart from that also the important locations, the physical locations which are important in case of South America as well as Central America, that also we will include in this discussion. So I hope you enjoyed this session. Let's start. So over here we can see the map of South America, and when you are going through this particular session, I would rather recommend that it would be better if you sit with your atlas, so that you can locate the places which I will mention in this particular video. So the first place that we are going to look at today is Brasilia. Now what is Brasilia, or where is Brasilia? So Brasilia, let us locate Brasilia first. Over here you can find the location of Brasilia being present. So I believe you can see from here that Brasilia is present over here, and Brasilia, it is the capital of Brazil. Brasilia was in the news because of a number of reasons. So first thing, Brasilia, it is the capital of Brazil, and Brazil is the largest country of the continent of South America. Now Brasilia was in the news because it was a location of the 11th BRICS summit. Now what is the full form of BRICS? As you might be aware, BRICS is a very important international organization comprising of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa are the countries which together make up BRICS. So BRICS mainly consist of the large developing economies, and those economies which are developing very rapidly. So as you can see, these are the countries which are a part of BRICS. So BRICS, they held their 11th conference at Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. The theme for this particular conference was BRICS, Economic Growth for an Innovative Future. Again, it is very important that you remember the theme for questions which are based on international relations. The theme for the 11th BRICS Summit was Economic Growth for an Innovative Future. Also, we get to see there is another very important point regarding Brasilia, is that Brasilia is the first city in the world which has hosted the BRICS Summit twice. So there is no other city in the world where the BRICS conference has been held twice except for Brasilia. So Brasilia is the first city in the world which has hosted the BRICS summit twice, and the previous one which was hosted by Brasilia was way back in 2010. And regarding BRICS, just a few points regarding BRICS. It contributes 42% of the world's population, 23% of the world's GDP, 18% of the world's global trade, and 30% of the total area of the world. Now again, it is not very important for you to remember each and every figure exactly, but have a rough idea that BRICS, it will contribute almost 42% of the world's population. So you can understand that most of these countries are really big in size. 23% of the GDP, 18% of global trade, and 30% of the total area of the world. So our first location for today was Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. Next location that we'll look at is the Amazon rainforest. Now the Amazon rainforest was in the news in the last year, mainly because of the extensive forest fires which were taking place in Amazon. Though it was not only Amazon which was suffering from very large forest fires, we also got to saw forest fires in the continent of Africa as well as in Australia, very devastating forest fires. But Amazon was in the news because this was the area where unusually large number of fires were experienced in the past 1 year. So let us see why this was the case. So just to give you an idea, this entire area around the river Amazon, comprising of over 9 countries. So this entire Amazon rainforest, it stretches across 9 countries, though the maximum part is present within Brazil. So first of all, let us just talk a little bit regarding this forest fire which had taken place in Amazon. So it was in the news because of the extensive wildfires which had spread over the entire continent. But again, wildfires are not something new for Amazon. But the problem was that the burning was happening at the highest rate since 2013. So please understand that forest fires are a natural phenomena in forests across the world, including Amazon, even in case of India also. So forest fires are a natural phenomena, but yes, what happens is due to anthropogenic causes, due to human interventions, sometimes the number of these fires as well as their intensity, that becomes very, very high, and it goes out of control, resulting in the destruction of huge areas of rainforest. And this is something which we experience even in India every single year. So be it in South India, in the Western Ghats, or be it in the Himalayas, that is Uttarakhand, or even in places like Madhya Pradesh and all, there will be fires every year. And these fires ideally are supposed to be a natural phenomena, mainly caused during the summer season when the forest is bone dry, and all the dry dead leaves, branches, etc., they act as fuel for the fire. What happens is when you have very hot winds blowing through the forest, you will find that these dry branches, they will rub against each other, setting up the fire actually. But then again, we get to see that human actions, mainly irresponsible human actions, for example, throwing off lit cigarette butts, or even clearing forest by something which we call as jhum cultivation, or even even trekkers who will be setting up bonfires and not putting out the fire properly. So these are some of the reasons why we get to see that these wildfires go out of control, or these forest fires, they go out of control. So here also I have noted down some of the reasons. Main causes of forest fires are, in case of Amazon rainforest or the Amazon fire, one of the major reasons for the fire was the fact that the current Brazil president, Mr. Bolsonaro, so he is somebody who was who had a very large support base amongst the cattle farmers of Brazil. So these cattle farmers, in order to increase the size of their farms, or the size of the pastures, they decided to set fire. And this is again not something new, but now the cattle farmers knew that they are protected by the president, and as a result of which we get to see that the cattle farmers, they started fires deliberately to clear forests in order to make way for ranching, for farming, for mining, drilling, etc., which ultimately resulted in the situation going out of hand. So basically, when you cut down a forest or when you burn down a forest, what happens is, in place of the trees you will have grasses growing, and those grasses will actually act as fodder for the huge population of cattle which exist, or cattle farms which exist all across or all around the Amazon rainforest. So we also have some data over here. Okay, according to data from Brazil's National Institute for Space Research, the Amazon forests in Brazil has experienced 74,155 fires since January 2019. So you can understand the problem is not the fire but the number of fires. So almost 75,000 fires. It's very difficult to control it because it has been burning, like there are so many places which start to burn simultaneously. And this is an 85% increase from the last year. That is, in 2018 also there were fires, but we get to see almost 85% increase in the number of fires in the year 2019. And also we get to see a significantly higher number of fires than what had occurred in the year 2016. Even in the year 2016, there were severe drought conditions in the region. Plus, we also had a very strong El Nino event. Now, I believe you are aware about what is El Nino. So, I will not be going into that. In case if you are not aware, please first go through what is El Nino. And then again, you can resume the video. So, the thing is, there was nothing abnormal about the climate in the year 2019. Or even the rainfall wasn't that bad as it was in the case of 2016. So basically the natural conditions, it wasn't the natural conditions which resulted in so many fires. It was mainly human activity and mainly deliberate fires which were set up by the cattle farmers in the Amazon rainforest. Now I was talking about the fact why would the cattle farmers set up these fires. The thing is, once the forest trees burn down, what happens is you have a secondary succession which will start. Now what is meant by secondary succession? For this you have to know what is meant by ecological succession. So what is ecological succession? Ecological succession basically talks about the phenomena due to which you will find one community of vegetation will be replaced by another community, and like this the entire process will go on till we have a particular community which becomes stable. This particular community which becomes stable, this particular community of vegetation, it will be called as climax vegetation. And similarly, the first community of vegetation which establishes or colonizes an area is what is called as a pioneer community or pioneer vegetation. So again, this is a concept from environment. So I hope you can go through this particular concept and then again resume this video. So what happens is, once you have the primary succession means an ecological succession taking place in an area where nothing used to exist before. So it was like a completely barren land, and over a period of time, maybe hundreds or thousands of years, in that area you have a forest coming up, a forest getting established. So when you have an ecological succession which starts from scratch, that is, nothing used to exist in that place earlier, such kind of an ecological succession will be called as a primary succession. But once a forest has got established, or let's say any other climax community has got established in an area, after that, if due to some reason, some kind of a catastrophe, some kind of a destructive activity, whether it is natural or man-made, whatever activity, if that activity or that event is able to destroy the climax vegetation, in that case we will get to see in that area a new succession will start, a new succession of vegetation will start. So this new succession which starts is what is referred to as secondary succession. So as you can see, secondary succession will start after the fire has ended, and these secondary forests in Malaysia especially, it is referred to as belukar. These secondary forests, especially in case of Malaysia, they are referred to as belukar. Now interesting thing is this, these secondary forests are usually not as rich as the primary forest. That is, let's say in Brazil, wherever the rainforest used to exist, if those areas have been affected by the forest fire, then automatically all the trees would get burned down. But eventually after a certain period of time, again you will get to see new trees coming up over there, but the forest will never be as rich as it was initially. So this is what is a secondary forest, and that will result in a huge loss of biodiversity. Okay. Regarding the Amazonian forest, a few more points that you should be aware of. It is the largest rainforest in the world, and it covers almost 40% of the surface area of South America. So largest rainforest in the world, it covers almost 40% of the area of South America. It is in fact much larger than entire India. So if you take entire India, imagine the entire India being covered, and not just one India but multiple Indias being covered by forest. That is how big the Amazonian rainforest is, and that is exactly why it is called as the lungs of the world. So the Amazonian rainforest is actually twice the size of India, and it is almost 60% of it is present in Brazil. Just to give you an idea how big the Amazonian rainforest is, it covers around 6.7 million square kilometers. The entire forest, the Amazonian rainforest, it covers 6.7 million square kilometers, which comes out to be twice the size of India, and 60% of this Amazonian rainforest is present in Brazil. But it is not only Brazil. That is what I told you. Okay, 60% is present in Brazil, but apart from that, 40% is present in 8 other countries. So if we look at the Amazonian rainforest, it is found in 9 countries on the whole. Largest area, of course, is in Brazil. But apart from Brazil, we also get to see Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guyana. These are the countries where we get to see the Amazonian rainforest being present. Very important that you understand which are those countries of South America where the Amazonian rainforest is not present. As you can understand, most of the countries of South America will have some part of Amazonian rainforest, but there are a few countries where the Amazonian rainforest is not present. So it is important that you remember these are the countries where the Amazonian rainforest is not present, and they are Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. So let us have a look at the political map of South America to have a better understanding of it. One second. Yeah. So over here you can see the political map of South America, and we get to see Brazil, Bolivia. All these areas will be covered by the Amazonian rainforest. But if you go to the southern part of South America, you will find Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, as well as Chile. These areas are not having any part of the Amazonian rainforest over there. So UPSC can ask a question from this particular point. They might put in a country and they might ask you which out of these countries does not have the Amazonian rainforest, because it was in the news. So that is why you have to be aware of this. Okay. Another very important thing that you should also know regarding the South American continent is most of the countries you would find will either face the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean. But then there are only two countries in South America which are landlocked countries. Two countries in South America which are landlocked countries. What do we understand with the term landlocked country? Landlocked country basically implies that it does not open out to a sea or to an ocean. So all the countries, they will have a border which opens out to a sea or which is surrounded by a sea or an ocean. But there are two countries, one is Bolivia, the other is Paraguay. One is Bolivia and the other is Paraguay. So these are the two countries, only two countries of South America which are landlocked countries. Here again, another important point that I would like to mention regarding Bolivia is it has the largest area under Ramsar sites. It has the largest area under Ramsar sites. Now what is meant by Ramsar? Now you might be aware about a particular convention called as the Ramsar Convention. And this Ramsar Convention was signed in the year 1971 in the Iranian city of Ramsar. This Ramsar Convention basically implies that it basically gives a tag of a Ramsar site to a wetland of international importance. So whichever country or whichever wetland is given the tag of a Ramsar site, automatically that becomes a wetland of international importance. So India has signed this Ramsar Convention, and we also get to see this was in the news in the past 1 year because there have been 10 such new wetlands which have been added under the list of Ramsar sites of India. So currently India has around 37 Ramsar sites. So Bolivia, if we look at Bolivia, Bolivia has the largest area under Ramsar sites. Here another thing that you should also know, if we talk about the largest area under Ramsar sites, that is present in Bolivia. But if you look at the country having the largest number of Ramsar sites, then it is United Kingdom. Okay, so United Kingdom will have 175 or more. The number is not important. What is important is you remember which country has the largest number of Ramsar sites, that is United Kingdom. On the other hand, when we talk about Bolivia, Bolivia has the largest area under Ramsar sites. So almost we get to see 1,48,000 square kilometer of Bolivia is under Ramsar sites. It is protected under Ramsar Convention. Okay, so this is regarding some of the countries. Moving on, we also get to see another very important location called as Manaus. Now, where is this Manaus? Manaus is present in Brazil. First, let us have a look at Manaus. Where is Manaus? So over here, right here, if you can see my pointer, right here we have Manaus, and Manaus is the only city which is present in the middle of the Amazonian rainforest. So let us look at Manaus. Manaus is the capital and it is the largest city of the Brazilian state of Amazonas. So what is Amazonas? Just like India has so many states, Brazil also has a number of states, and one of the state of Brazil is Amazonas, and the capital and the largest city of this particular state of Brazil is Manaus. Manaus also is the 7th largest city in Brazil. It has a population of over 2 lakh. Now that is not important, but remember the name Manaus. The Manaus is located at the east center of the state of Amazonas. It is the center of the Manaus metropolitan area. It is the largest metropolitan area in the northern region of Brazil, if you look at the urban landmass. And very important is it is situated at the confluence, that is the meeting point of two rivers. One river is called as Negro and the other river is called as Solimões. So there are two rivers which meet over here at Manaus. One is called as the Negro river, the other is called as Solimões river. And also we get to see that Manaus is located in the center of the world's largest rainforest, as we were studying right now. Okay, the Amazonian rainforest is located right at the center. Imagine an urban city located right in the middle of the Amazonian rainforest, that is Manaus for you. And Manaus is also home to the National Institute of Amazonian Research, which is the most important center for scientific studies in the Amazonian region, and also to study regarding international sustainability issues. And that is why we get to see Manaus is also called as the heart of the Amazon or the city of the forest. Again, because Amazonian rainforest has been in the news, that is why you should also know that there is a city present right in the heart of the Amazonian rainforest. So it is also referred to as the heart of the Amazon or the city of the forest. The name is Manaus, which is in Brazil. Another area or another tribe, as you might be aware that in Amazonian forest we have many tribes, some of which are uncontacted primitive tribes. What I mean by uncontacted primitive tribes is these kind of tribes, they have never come in touch with the modern civilization. Like in case of India, in Andaman Nicobar, we have such tribes, for example the Sentinelese tribe, for example the Jaroa tribe, who are living in a time wrap. So it's like they are still in the Stone Age, despite of us today talking about so many cutting edge technology. We do have people living right now in the world who are present in the Stone Age. For example, in India, in Andaman Nicobar, we have the Sentinelese tribe, the Jaroa tribe. Similarly, in the Amazonian rainforest, we have many such tribes. And we get to see, unfortunately, that the coronavirus, COVID-19, it has actually started to spread even amongst some of these uncontacted primitive tribes. One such tribe is called as Yanomami tribe. One such tribe is called as Yanomami tribe, and Yanomami tribe was in the news. Now question might be asked, where or in which country is this particular tribe found? So please know Yanomami tribe, it is found in the countries of Brazil and Venezuela. It is found in the countries of Brazil and Venezuela. And why was it in the news? It was in the news because we get to see recently a boy belonging to this particular tribe, that is Yanomami tribe, he died after contracting the COVID-19 disease. Yanomami tribe, it is an indigenous tribe Also, they are sometimes referred to as the South American Indians. They are also referred to as the South American Indians. They live in the remote forest of the Orinoco River Basin, and this Orinoco River Basin is present in southern Venezuela. So it is present in southern Venezuela. So over here, I don't think we have Orinoco. So yes, we'll see Orinoco in a while. We have the physical map later on. So I'll just show you Orinoco River, but before that, let us just know a little bit regarding this particular tribe. So we get to see that a boy belonging to the Yanomami tribe, which is found in Brazil and Venezuela. So he had died after contracting COVID-19. So this particular tribe, who are also referred to as South American Indians, they live in the remote forest of the Orinoco River Basin in southern Venezuela and in the northernmost reaches of the Amazon River Basin. So you can think about this tribe being found in the northern part of South America, in Brazil and Venezuela, in northern Brazil. So if you look at their practice, they practice hunting and slash and burn agriculture. So as you can understand, they are very primitive tribe. So they are mainly practice hunting and slash and burn agriculture. And Brazil is home to an estimated 8 lakh indigenous people from over 300 ethnic groups. For example, these are some of the names of the groups: Guarani, Kaingang, Yanomami, Tikuna, Akunsu. These are some of the popular tribes of the Amazonian rainforest. Okay, so remember Yanomami tribe, which was in the news. Similarly, another important location of South America would be Mount Aconcagua. Mount Aconcagua, it is the highest peak in South America. Mount Aconcagua, it is the highest peak of South America. And apart from it being the highest peak of South America, it is also the highest point in the Western Hemisphere. What is the height? It is around 6,962 meters high. So Mount Aconcagua, it is the highest peak of South America. It is also the highest peak in the Western Hemisphere. Around almost 7,000 meters high is the height of Mount Aconcagua. It lies in southern Andes mountain. So you will be able to see, if you look at the physical map of South America in your atlas, you will be able to see that this Andes mountain, it runs all along the western coast of South America. Along with this Mount Aconcagua, just follow your map in the atlas and you should be able to see a few important lakes. These are some of the extra locations that you should be aware of. Lake Titicaca. You should be aware of this particular lake called as Lake Titicaca. Okay, so have an understanding regarding this Lake Titicaca. Let me just magnify it for you. Okay, Lake Titicaca, L-A-K-E-T-I-T-I-C-A-C-A. Lake Titicaca, you should be aware of that. Similarly, you will also get to see some important peaks, some important volcanic peaks. For example, if you just follow the Andes mountain in your atlas, you should be able to find Mount Cotopaxi. Mount Cotopaxi. It is another important peak which is found in the Andes mountain. Similarly, another important peak that you will be able to find is called as Mount Chimborazo. Mount Chimborazo. That is also another important peak, Mount Chimborazo, which is found in the Andes mountain range. Apart from that, if you follow the Andes and if you go a little bit to the south, there you will be able to find the Atacama Desert. In Chile itself, between the Andes mountain and the coast of Chile, that is the Pacific coast, you will be able to find the Atacama Desert. Atacama Desert, it is a very important area because Atacama Desert is considered to be the driest desert in the world. Atacama Desert is considered to be the driest desert in the world. Okay, so this is one area. Let us move on and see the other locations. Next important location that we look at is called as selvas, S-E-L-V-A-S. So if you are looking at the physical map of South America, you will be able to find this term selvas. What is the meaning of selvas? Selvas basically means the equatorial rainforest. Mainly the term selva is used to denote the Amazonian rainforest in the local term. So selva, what does selva mean? Selva basically implies the the equatorial rainforest. Similarly, over here you should also be able to find, so over here we have the Orinoco River. You should also be able to find two such places. One is called as Llanos, the other is called as Campos. Let's see if we have, yes, so over here you should be able to find Llanos over here to the northern part of South America and Campos in the eastern part of the Brazilian highlands. So Llanos and Campos, what are these? Llanos and Campos are the names of tropical grasslands of South America. Tropical grasslands of South America. What is meant by grassland? Grassland is basically an area which is dominated by grasses. Very rarely will you be able to find trees present over here. Mainly it is dominated by grasses. The grasslands again can be divided into two types. You can either have tropical grasslands or you can have temperate grasslands. So you can understand on the basis of the location of the grassland, and also the type of climate which exists over there, you can differentiate or you can classify the grasslands as either being tropical or temperate grasslands. So for example, over here we can see Llanos and Campos. These are examples of tropical grasslands. Similarly, in case of Africa, you will also be able to find savanna. Savanna is an example of a tropical grassland. But you will also be able to see that there are a number of temperate grasslands as well. For example, in North America, if you see, you will find an area called as prairies. Prairies is also a grassland, but it is an example of a temperate grassland. And even in case of South America itself, if you go a little to the south of South America, that is present in Argentina especially, there you will be able to find an area called as Pampas. Pampas is also an example of a temperate grassland. Similarly, you come to Eurasia and there you will be able to find steppes. Steppes is also an example of a temperate grassland. Or you go to, let's say, in case of Africa, you will be able to see velds. Velds which is found in South Africa. So that is also an example of a temperate grassland. You go to Australia, you will get to see downs. Downs is also an example of a temperate grassland. Or even if you go to New Zealand, you will get to see the Canterbury Plains will be present. So these Canterbury Plains are also an example of a temperate grassland. It is very important that you remember the names of these grasslands and their locations where they are present. So Llanos, Campos, all of these are tropical grasslands which are present in the continent of South America. Okay, so Llanos, Campos we have seen. Now moving on to the other important locations of South America. Another area that you will get to see is called as Caatingas. Catingas. Sometimes it also is pronounced with a double A. So sometimes CAA is the spelling given. So whatever it is, whether it is Caatinga or Caatinga, ultimately what is this? This is an area which is having xeric shrubland. Question is, what is meant by xeric? Xeric basically means the type of vegetation which is found in arid and semi-arid areas. So basically that type of vegetation where we will get to see, or those vegetation which are adapted to exist in areas where there is very little amount of rainfall. This question had come twice in UPSC prelims, where UPSC had asked, okay, what are the various types of modifications that xeric type of vegetation should have. So you can understand, okay, if a particular plant or if some kind of vegetation is growing in an arid or a semi-arid area, their main objective will be to be able to conserve moisture. And how will it conserve moisture? It will conserve moisture by having fleshy stem. It will conserve moisture by not having too many leaves or having the leaves converted into thorns, or it might be having very long roots in order to be able to reach the water which is present very deep below the soil. Similarly, they might also be having a waxy layer. So these are some of the features that we get to see in case of xeric vegetation. So what are Caatingas? Caatinga is a xeric shrubland and a thorn forest. So you can see the location of Caatinga. It is a xeric shrubland or a thorn forest which consists primarily of small thorny trees which shed their leaves seasonally. It is mainly a desertic type of vegetation which is found in northeastern Brazil. It is also referred to as white forest or white vegetation. Why will it be referred to as white forest or white vegetation? You can understand, okay, it does not have too much of canopy. Green canopy is not present, and as a result of which Mostly it is made up of such kind of thorny bushes, etc. So that is why it is also referred to as white forest or white vegetation. So please remember what is Katinga, the location of Katinga, and also remember it is also referred to as white forest or white vegetation. If you go a little to the east of this area, that is you go to the eastern coast of Brazil, not exactly at the coast, but a little hinterland area of the coast basically. So that area will be called as Sertão, S-E-R-T-A-O, Sertão, S-E-R-T-A-O, Sertão. What does Sertão stand for? Sertão is actually hinterland or also referred to as back country. Sertão is called as hinterland, also referred to as back country, and it is one of the 4 sub-regions of the northeastern region of Brazil. Now, whether it is what are the sub-regions, etc., that is not important. What is important is you remember it is a hinterland. Hinterland means basically an area which is situated far away from the coast. So you can see this Sertão is not exactly at the coast, but it is situated a little bit far away from it in the interior part. So in Brazil it is also referred to as backlands, and they are situated away from the Atlantic coastal regions. These Atlantic coasts were actually initially colonized by the Portuguese. So it was the Portuguese who had first settled in South America in the early 16th century. Okay, so that is why this particular area becomes important. So these were the areas where the Portuguese had first settled in South America. This particular area, it is covered by distinctive scrubby Caatinga vegetation. Just now we have discussed what is Caatinga vegetation. So Caatinga vegetation is basically xeric type of vegetation, and as you can understand, this area is situated far away from the coast. So that is why the vegetation over here is also of arid or semi-arid kind of vegetation. Mainly you will find what kind of things, low thorny bushes will be there, and you will have several species of trees in the Caatinga. For example, cashew nut will be there. Some amount of horticultural plants will be there. But what is important is this, okay, most of the natural vegetation of this Sertão region, it has become degraded. And why it has become degraded? Because these areas are mainly covered by huge cattle farms, cattle ranches, and also we get to see cotton farming is carried out over here. So please remember, this Sertão region is the area where you will have huge cattle farms, and because of having such huge number of livestock, especially cattle, what has happened is years and years of ranching, years and years of grazing has resulted in the loss of the natural vegetation, and hence today you have mostly xeric type of vegetation found over here. But despite of that, we get to see that it is an example of a biodiversity hotspot, mainly because you have very unique flora present over here. You have some very unique type of flora present over here. Okay, so this is regarding Sertão. Moving on to the next area that we have, that is called as the Plateau of Mato Grosso. Plateau of Mato Grosso. So let us have a look, where is Plateau of Mato Grosso. So here you can find, just below this particular area, you can find Plateau of Mato Grosso being present. So in case of Plateau of Mato Grosso, we get to see that there are some important points that you have to remember. Okay, it is a plateau in central Brazil. Plateau of Mato Grosso, it is a plateau in central Brazil, which occupies most of the state of Mato Grosso. It mainly consists of savanna and woodlands. It is an ancient erosional plateau. In the south, it gives way to floodplains called as the Pantanal. So Mato Grosso, it is actually a plateau. Where it is located? It is located in central Brazil. It occupies most of the state of, the name of the state is also Mato Grosso. Most of the vegetation over here is savanna type. What is savanna? Tropical grassland. And what happens is, if you go further to the south, then you will find it will give rise to floodplains called as the Pantanal. Now this Pantanal area, it is again, this particular area is being referred to. This is the Pantanal area. And over here in the Pantanal area, we get to see very thick forests are present. So this is the floodplain. So here you have a plateau in the central part of Brazil. If you go further to the south, you get to see a floodplain of rivers being present, which is called as Pantanal. Now moving on, next thing that we get to see is the Gran Chaco region. So let us quickly have a look at Gran Chaco. Where is Gran Chaco? So Gran Chaco will not be found over here. Here you have the Gran Chaco region. So as you can see, it covers some part of Paraguay and Argentina. So this is the Gran Chaco region, and let us see a few points regarding the Grand Chaco region. The Grand Chaco region is also referred to as Dry Chaco. It is a very sparsely populated, it is hot, semi-arid, lowland natural region. It is divided amongst eastern Bolivia. You will also get to see some part will lie in Paraguay, northern Argentina, and you will also have a little bit of portion lying in Brazil as well, especially the Mato Grosso area. It is connected with the Pantanal region, and it is also sometimes referred to as the Chaco Plain. So remember these features of the Grand Chaco region. It is a sparsely populated area. It is hot, semi-arid lowland. It is divided amongst which are the countries in which you will find this particular Grand Chaco region: Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Brazil. And sometimes it is also referred to as the Chaco Plains. Okay, so moving on, after this we'll look at a little bit of areas, some important areas of Central America which were in the news. So if we look at Central America is basically a very narrow piece of land which connects the continent of North America with South America. So over here you should know, okay, when you have a very narrow piece of land connecting two very large pieces of lands, like over here we get to see two very large continents, that is the continent of North America and the continent of South America are connected via this particular narrow piece of land. So such kind of narrow pieces of land are also referred to as isthmus. Isthmus is the term used for a narrow piece of land which connects two very large land masses. Similarly, over here you might also get to see, in many of the cases we will get to see that there is a narrow stretch of water body or a narrow water body which connects two very large water bodies. When you have a narrow water body which connects two very large water bodies, we call it to be a strait. On the other hand, when you have a narrow piece of land connecting two very large pieces of landmass, those are called as isthmus. Okay, so over here we have the Isthmus of Panama, which is basically making up Central America. So let us look at Central America, and we get to see there is a particular term called as a North Triangle. So what is this North Triangle? North Triangle basically comprises of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. So let us see where these particular countries are present. We get to see Guatemala is present over here, El Salvador is over here, and Honduras over here. These three countries together, remember the countries: Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. These three countries together, they are referred to as the Northern Triangle. What is the significance of this Northern Triangle area? You will find over here there will be widespread poverty. You will have a lot of violence taking place over here. Crimes, corruption, all of these are very rampant in this particular area. So this Northern Triangle is actually infamous for having very widespread poverty, violence, corruption, crimes, etc. And hence what has happened is you will find most of the people who live in such areas, they will try to migrate out from these areas. As you can understand, migration can be of two types. You can have in-migration or you can have out-migration. In-migration means what? In-migration means people are coming into an area. In-migration is also referred to as immigration. So immigration is when you have people coming into an area. On the other hand, when we say out-migration, which means people are moving out of an area. So that is what is called as immigration. So immigration, you should be able to understand the difference. And how will you remember immigration? You can compare it with import. So when you import something, it comes into your country. So basically when people are coming into a region, we call it as immigration. On the other hand, when you export something, which means goods are going out of a country. So similarly, immigration is when you have people moving out of a country. That is what is referred to as immigration. And you might be aware that there are something which are called as the factors for migration. So you can have something called as push factors and pull factors of migration. Push factors are essentially those factors which result in emigration, that is people moving out. So push factors are actually those factors which make an area undesirable for living. So let's say there is too much of crime, there is not enough resources, jobs are not present, so employment opportunities are not there, or health facilities are not there. Then you will find that there will be people moving out of that area. So that is called as emigration taking place. And why emigration occurs? The factors which cause emigration are referred to as push factors of migration. Similarly, the people who are moving out of an area will naturally move to some other area. Why will they be attracted to that particular area? They will be attracted to that particular area because that area will be having exactly the opposite type of conditions, and these conditions which will make that area, the destination area, very attractive for the migrants. So these factors which make an area attractive for the migrants, and that is the result, and that is why you find migrants moving to that area. So that destination area will be having something which is called as pull factors. So please go through what is push factor of migration, pull factors of migration. Basically what is happening is that, let's say for example in case of Middle East, that is West Asia, similarly you will find there are many African countries where you will have a lot of migration taking place. Even in case of India, look at the eastern states of India, for example look at Bihar, look at West Bengal, look at Orissa. You will find a lot of people move out of these areas because the conditions are not suitable for them to find these areas to be very attractive for living. So these areas are where you have a lot of migration taking place. And similarly we will have these three countries, El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras. The conditions which exist over there, those are similar to the conditions which we also refer to as push factors, and as a result of which we get to see a lot of people are moving out of these areas and they are becoming refugees. And recently we also get to see Mr. Donald Trump, the president of USA, he has cut down aid. Earlier he used to give money to these countries, but now he has cut down aid because what happens is the people will move out of these countries and eventually they will move into North America, go into Mexico, and via Mexico they will find their way into USA. That is their ultimate destination. So Mr. Donald Trump, he has decided to stop any kind of help, financial help to these countries, because a lot of migrants from these countries are coming into USA. Also we get to see El Salvador was in the news for another reason. El Salvador was in the news because we get to see in the country of El Salvador they have been destroying their forest, and almost 85% of the native forests of El Salvador has been lost since the 1960s. So you can understand the amount of deforestation which has taken place in El Salvador. Almost 85% of the native forest of El Salvador has been lost since the 1960s, and hence the government of El Salvador decided it has to preserve whatever remaining forests are there, and that is why they have recognized forests as living entities. The forest of El Salvador has been recognized as living entities, which basically means that they will also have some amount of rights just like human beings do. And each person of El Salvador has to commit to preserve and respect the forest. People should also promote concrete actions to expand forests in the country. For example, in case of India, we will also have something called as sacred groves, or we will have community forestry, we will have social forestry. So similarly, in case of El Salvador, they have been made to commit to ensure that the remaining forests are protected, they are preserved. Similarly, you also have something called as the Andean Community Free Trade Agreement, FTA. And it is very important that you remember which countries come under this FTA. Now we are again going back to South America. So which countries come under FTA, the Andean Community FTA? It is Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Peru. Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Peru. So you can see the countries located over here. So you'll have Bolivia, Colombia, and you'll have Ecuador and Peru. So basically this western part you will find here amongst these countries they have a free trade agreement which is called as Andean Community Free Trade Agreement. So please remember the Andean Community Free Trade Agreement, which countries are a part of it. Think about the western part of South America. So the countries which are lying over there, western and northwestern part, for example Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Peru. These are the countries. Similarly, there is another very important trade we get to see another important common market which is there. It is called as Mercosur. Mercosur is a trade bloc and it is also referred to as the Southern Common Market. So Mercosur is also referred to as the Southern Common Market. It is a South American trade bloc which was established by the Treaty of Asuncion in 1991 and also by the Protocol of Otu Preto in 1994. So just remember Mercosur, it is a South American trade bloc. It has been established by a treaty which is called as the Treaty of Asuncion in 1991 and the Protocol of Ouro Preto in 1994. Who are the members of Mercosur? The members of Mercosur are Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. So don't get confused between Andean Community Free Trade Agreement and Mercosur. In case of Mercosur, you have Argentina, you have Brazil, you have Paraguay and Uruguay. So basically Central and Southern South American countries are a part of Mercosur, whereas in case of Andean Community Free Trade Agreement, we get to see mainly Western and Northwestern countries of South America. Now very interestingly, we get to see Mercosur. Venezuela used to be a full-time member, but now it has been suspended. There are also some associate countries, for example, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru and Suriname. We also get to see there are two observer countries, for example, New Zealand and Mexico are the observer countries. It has a very large population and a large area, but the population area not so important from UPSC's point of view. Another very important country which was there in the news for a number of reasons is Venezuela. Now, where is Venezuela? Let us look at Venezuela first. So you can see where Venezuela is located. Please remember which are the bordering countries of Venezuela. So to the south you will find Brazil, to the west you will find Colombia, to the east you will find Guyana, and on top you will find you have the coast of Atlantic Ocean. So regarding Venezuela, it has been in the news multiple times, and the reasons we'll see one by one. First is, what is the capital of Venezuela? Capital is Caracas. The capital of Venezuela is Caracas. And who are the neighbors? We get to see Colombia, like we have seen. Colombia lies to the west, Guyana lies to the east, Brazil lies to the south, and to the north you will have the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, and also you will have the Caribbean Sea. The problem, major reason why Venezuela was in the news was because Venezuela is suffering from hyperinflation. Venezuela is suffering from hyperinflation, which basically means that every year the annual inflation rate, it has reached up to 10 million times. So 10 million percentage is the annual inflation rate for Venezuela. Basically the situation is so bad in Venezuela that people are burning money. So if you have to go and get a pound of bread, in that case you will have to take maybe an entire cartload of money, notes, in order to get the bread, because this is the kind of hyperinflation which Venezuela has experienced. 54% of the transactions in Venezuela during September 2019 was conducted in terms of US dollars. And this is what is called as dollarization. And why did this happen? Why did dollarization take place? Because the local currency has lost its value. Due to the extreme amount of hyperinflation, the local currency has lost its value. And main reason behind this economic crisis is what President Nicolas Maduro had been doing. So he was also in the news because he has been trying to restrain the opposition, to stop the opposition from highlighting the terrible economic crisis which the people of Venezuela are facing. And if you have seen the pictures, the photographs coming out of Venezuela, then you will find that people over there are starving to such an extent that they are actually having to go through the garbage dumps in order to find food, because they don't have money to buy food. The price has increased to that much. And this automatically will result in mass scale migration across the borders. So devaluation of currency has taken place, and Venezuela is a country whose economy was to a great extent dependent upon its oil trade, upon its oil export. But as we get to see that the price of oil has dropped to a great extent of late, and this oil trade made up 98%. So the revenue coming from oil export, that made up 98% of the export of Venezuela. Automatically, since it was almost so it was like dependent only on only one particular product, that is oil. So automatically, whenever there is a fall in the price of the oil in the international market, such countries will be affected. So and that is exactly why we get to see Venezuela, the economic crisis started when the price of oil started to fall. So it was dependent on the oil revenue. And looking at the fact that the local currency of Venezuela had lost its value, that is why the government decided to launch a cryptocurrency called as Petro. So please remember, Petro is the cryptocurrency which was launched in Venezuela. It was launched in February 2018. It is a cryptocurrency which is issued by the government of Venezuela, and it is backed by the country's oil and mineral reserves. But again, it was found that people are not really using the Petro, because again it is backed by the country's oil and mineral reserves, which does not hold much of a value right now, and hence people are more they are resorting to using dollars for their trading purpose. So that is why you have dollarization of the economy taking place. Next up, another important location of South America which was in the news is Puerto Williams. Puerto Williams is present in Chile. Let us see where is Puerto Williams. So over here in this map you can see Puerto Williams is here in Chile, absolutely southern part of Chile. And at the same time also have another location, as just have a look at this particular location which is in Argentina. The name is Ushuaia. So Ushuaia or Ushuaia is this particular location. So have a look at this location, Ushuaia in Argentina, and Puerto Williams which is in Chile. Why am I saying this? Because Puerto Williams, it has actually overtaken this particular location of Argentina as the southernmost city of the world. So let's see. Puerto Williams, it is present in the southernmost portion of Chile. It's a remote hamlet, but last year it was upgraded to the status of a city by the authorities of Chile. So now it has become a city, and it has become the southernmost city of the entire world. Earlier the southernmost city was in Argentina, that is Ushuaia, but now this Ushuaia of Argentina, it has been replaced by Puerto Williams of Chile as the southernmost city in the world. So that is why this particular city was in the news, and you should have an idea about the location of Ushuaia. It is present over here. Another important location of South America that you should be aware of is the Strait of Magellan. So the Strait of Magellan, let's see, the Strait of Magellan is actually located through this area. So this entire line that you can see is basically connecting the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. Just now I mentioned what is meant by a strait. What is a strait? A strait is a narrow stretch of water which will connect two larger water bodies. So over here we get to see it is a very narrow strait, and this is present in the southern Chile. So what is the Strait of Magellan? It is a navigable sea route of southern Chile which separates, or rather which connects, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. It is located near southern Chile along the southern edges of South American continent, and it links the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. It has been named after the Portuguese adventurer Ferdinand Magellan, who was the first explorer to circumnavigate the globe. Circumnavigation means going around the entire globe. So Ferdinand Magellan was the first person to do so, and this strait which connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean has been named as the Strait of Magellan after Magellan. So please remember the location of the Strait of Magellan. Apart from this, these were the important locations. Apart from this, there are many other locations as such. For example, you can look at the various countries through which the Amazon River will run, and similarly you will also get to see there are some other important rivers. For example, Colorado River will be there. Okay, Colorado River will be there. Similarly, you will get to see in case of Argentina, you will have an area called as Bahia Blanca. So you can see over here Bahia Blanca. Bahia Blanca is a very important area because this is one of the greatest areas, one of the best areas for one of the best areas for fishing. And why is it a very important area for fishing? Again, in geography you would have studied that those locations wherever we get to see warm oceanic current meeting with the cold oceanic current, and at the same time if that area has a wide continental shelf, there are many other factors involved, but these are some of the most basic factors that you should be aware of. Okay, whenever you have a warm oceanic current meeting with or converging with the cold oceanic current, and also you have a wide continental shelf, such areas become very conducive for the fishing industry. So this Bahia Blanca area, it is very conducive for fishing industry. So remember this area as well. Similarly, I had also mentioned at the very beginning that the Atacama Desert is very important. So if you have gone through the entire phenomena of El Nino, La Nina, then you will find that the coast of the western coast of South America, especially the Ecuador, Peru coast, similarly Atacama Desert, these areas you will be going through them again and again while studying El Nino, La Nina. So also you know that these areas, I mean, wherever you will have deserts, so the desertic areas are very important for copper mines. So you will have a very I mean, some very big copper towns located in the country of Chile, mainly because of the dry arid climate that it has. So it, for example, you will have places like Iquique, Arica. These areas are all desertic areas. Okay, so please go through the factors which result in the creation of deserts over here along the coast of Chile. Similarly, you will also get to see, okay, on the leeward side of the Andes mountain, on the leeward side of the Andes mountain, you will find that there is a desert which is also called as Patagonia desert. So basically on either side of the Andes mountain you will find desert. On one side you will find, like along the South Pacific Ocean coast, you will find the Atacama desert, and in the interior part, that is in the leeward side, you will find the Patagonian desert which is there. Why is the Patagonian desert formed? The Patagonian desert is formed mainly because it is lying on the leeward side, which is the rain shadow region of the Andes. On the other hand, if I look at the Atacama desert, one of the major reasons why you have the Atacama desert formation is because of the desiccating effect. What is meant by desiccating effect? Desiccating effect, DESSICATING, desiccating effect basically implies the drying effect. So desiccating effect of the cold Humboldt current. There is a cold current which flows along the western coast of South America, which is called as the Humboldt current. So please go through that current as well. Peru current, also called as the Humboldt current, and that results in a drying effect, which is also referred to as desiccating effect, leading to the creation of the Atacama desert. Okay, so these were some of the important places. Of course, there are many such important places. So keep a tab on the news, and we will meet again in our next session with another continent. Till then, stay safe, study hard, and best of luck for the upcoming UPSC Prelims 2020. So this is me here, Shayak Datta, signing off for this session. Thank you so much.